Now, Positively Ernie with Ernie Anastas, a New York TV legend and radio host with great positive stories and interviews.
Thanks, Ernie. You're the best.
And now, here's Ernie.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Nice to have you back. We're going to ask that camera to come in just a little bit. I like the intimacy so we can see each other a little better. Is that good? Yeah, I like that. It feels good. Welcome to the show. I'm going to have a fun day today because I have a terrific guest, somebody I've known a long time, Gigi Stonewoods. Hold my hands. Good to see you.
Oh
my
to be
God.
Here and see
you know what? We're such good friends.
I know. It's
done
really
so many things together. People should know about you.
Nicest man in the business.
Well, yeah, you're the nicest person in the business, too. Gigi is a terrific person. Got a lot of background. National television host. I mean, you name the network. Bloomberg, MSNBC. No, really. Good Morning America.
Yeah. Some of them. Fox News Channel. Never done that one.
Fox News Channel. Okay, so you still have a few to go. I don't blame you. But she is a terrific person. And you are, you're a businesswoman in many ways. You create a lot of different ideas. You also are a futurist. You look towards what's going to happen tomorrow. We've done a couple of interviews before. But we're going to talk about that in a minute. I want to ask you. Sometimes I ask people, like my question of the day.
Uh-oh.
So here it is. It's an easy one. Okay, you fill in the blank. What the world needs now is what?
That one right now seems a little obvious.
A loaded question.
Peace, empathy, understanding of each other, understanding of complexity.
Yeah.
Everyone is so binary. I hate to be so serious, but everyone is so just stuck in their ways, and we've grown to look at the world as these two opposing conflicting ideas, and it's just so much more complicated than that. We really have to try to understand each other.
Gigi, you know what? We've been in the news business a long time, covered a lot of stories, and we've seen a lot of changes. But I mean, right now, this program is about positivity, okay? But I like to look at a problem and say, okay, now let's figure out how we can make it better. How can we improve it? And you're absolutely right. I mean, there's so much divisiveness. I find there's so much anger. A lot of angry people, and that hate thing is really a terrible thing to see, and it evolves everywhere. Every time you turn around.
Shockingly prevalent in a way that I think surprised all of us.
So how are we going to fix this? What are we going to do?
So one concern, the solution I'm not sure of, but I really think that it seems obvious that social media is amplifying this. Everyone is in their own echo chamber. The algorithms are feeding them the exact same thing that they think, and it's also making the most hate-filled speech rise to the top so that more people see it. It goes viral, and it winds up creating this anger that is really hard. So
when
there's a little responsibility on the part of those companies, maybe legislation.
I think you're right, because when you and I first got into this news business, I mean, we knew that we had to be careful with our sources. We had to make sure that we were responsible, fair, accuracy, the truth. And then all of a sudden, we have social media, we have, the internet, we have all kinds of voices coming out there that don't have to identify themselves. And you can say whatever you want. That's dangerous. And I agree with you. We should have found a way to legislate this thing, to control it somehow, to rule out some of the things that you can't do.
I don't think it's too late. I think that
I hope not.
I think that there are possibilities in the works. And some of the people who invented some things that are particularly insidious, if you want to call it that, but the guy who invented the endless scroll on social media now really regrets it and has come out and said he really thinks that needs to change. So people are speaking up, and Congress is starting to listen. So perhaps.
I hope so.
We don't want to take away freedom of speech.
No,
it's
not at all.
Presented.
No, I know how you feel the same way. I mean, I don't believe in censorship. I want to make sure that we have the stories out there, but we also have to have this balance that we talk about often. Come on, we've got all the negative stuff going on, folks, but let's talk about some of the positive things. Like today, we're talking about the future.
Right, so that's actually a good point, because there's so many things right now that seem so scary about the future with technology just moving at this breakneck pace.
Right.
And we've got AI creating poems and stories and pictures from scratch, entire books, movies. It's frightening to people. Right. But we're going to look at the positive, because there's so many fun, interesting things that are really going to improve our lives in the future and make it better. So I talked to some futurists to find out what they think actually might happen.
All right, so let's break it down a little bit. Let's start with, just on a personal level, personal assistants, people like that helping us out. Maybe not people. You mentioned AI, and that's a powerhouse. this. So let's talk about, on a personal level, how we're going to be affected by the future in terms of technology and the changes that we can expect. Go ahead.
The robots that we constantly see or imagine, the humanoid robots, are probably going to be less of a thing for us in the future. But what really could actually help our lives is robots that do things like mow your lawn, robots that clean your house, robots that can protect your home from burglars in the form of high advanced security systems. So there are some really helpful things that could
And we have some of that now, but it's going to advance even more. It's going to become even easier to use, perhaps, and hopefully a little cheaper, too.
Easier, cheaper, and just so much more prevalent.
Yeah. Hey, when people think about the future, they say, hey, are we going to have like these flying cars? We hear about that. Do I have to tell you about traffic? Everywhere. I don't care what city you're living in, whether it's New York, Chicago, San Francisco, the traffic is horrendous. So people are trying to figure out, what are we going to do about solving that problem? Is it crazy to think about flying cars?
No, it's not crazy at all. In fact, futurists tell me they think it is really going to happen and that traffic will be minimized in the future. Well, that's the part the government is figuring out. But what I can tell you, I mean, a lot of the companies that were working on flying cars already haven't worked out. But there are currently more than 100 companies with projects for flying cars in the works in the U.S. alone.
Wow.
So it is something that is down the pike. It's a question of when and how they'll be able to regulate the airspace.
Well, I think that's the issue right there. I mean, when you think about people getting in a car and just pulling up into the sky, how is that going to work? I mean, we have enough trouble, with airplanes, making sure that they're safe. And then when you have a bunch of people flying their cars, it's just going to be a different world. When I started looking at some of this information, talk about work. I mean, the 9 to 5 thing right now is pretty much out there, gone. People are saying, I want to work from home. I want, a virtual kind of lifestyle. And I read something, and I want you to elaborate on this, that small towns are going to start to really feel the benefit. That a lot of corporations who are in big cities are going to say, you know what, we don't need to have everybody coming into the city. Let's build an office, in the suburbia area, and then they can walk to work. They can drive there in 15 minutes. You think that's going to happen?
So that actually is the future, is these sort of what they're calling 15-minute cities, for better or for worse.
Yeah.
So companies will create sort of towns around their corporate headquarters, and you'd be able to go to a store. It will have everything that you possibly need. The post office, the stores, the exercise. Everything that you would ever need would be walking distance, so then you wouldn't need cars to get there. You could go by bicycle or walking.
When you think about people going to work every day, right? I mean, the stress of driving in maybe 2 hours, the cost of the tolls, the gas, the environment, all of it, it just makes sense that they would say, you know what? People prefer to have a lifestyle as well as just having a job. I think that's going to make a big difference.
And they already are. The workers are speaking up. So many companies said, you have to be back in the office. And the workers are like, sorry, find someone else. They have taken back a little bit of the power and they're not doing it. But there are a lot of interesting things that they're working on that will help the environment.
Okay.
One huge problem is pollution, obviously, and plastic waste. And so they've developed, instead of water bottles, it'll be almost like these water balloons that are covered with a membrane that is made of seaweed extract.
Wow.
So you could just pop it in your mouth and then be hydrated that way. Right. And it would decompose if you don't use it. And the U.S. Department of Agriculture is working on edible food wrappers made of a protein that's found in milk. Researchers in Finland have already figured out a way to turn sand into these giant batteries that can heat nearby homes.
Oh,
so
we need
this fast race to come up with renewable energy sources to save the environment, and that is a positive thing.
When you talk about the environment, it's connected to health and, and food. So you start thinking about, first of all, a lot of hospitals are saying, it's too expensive for people to come here, to stay for a week, for example, and someone takes their, their vitals and then gives them a little medicine. They could do that from home. And so they're looking to say, let's all the self stuff that you put on your little wristband and it takes all your vitals and so forth. I think people are going to become more, from what I've read, more dependent on that sort of thing on their own rather than maybe even going to the doctor. virtual medicine, telemedicine. I think that's going to become extremely popular, even though it's out there now.
100%, and it's going to be only more so. They're actually going to create sort of a digital, almost hologram of your health system and input all of the information, and that will be able to predict how things are going to go in the future. Besides, everyone just is going to be living so much longer.
Yeah.
And it's not just about the ability to find cure for all of these diseases, but it's actually also going to be that they'll be able to do genetic sequencing to take away genetic defects. Like, for example, if you have a predisposition to diabetes. So it'll be about preventing the catching of the diseases in the first place.
I get excited about that. I know you do too. I mean, when you think about it, you talked about longevity. I mean, that's what people look for. You know, how can I live longer and live better, live healthier? And I think when we start thinking about the progress there, it gets us very excited. I start also thinking about virtual farming. Now, there's a company out in Chicago, I think it's Green Spirit, and they're doing that. They're growing spinach and so forth. Instead of having the traditional farms on the land, they're putting it in buildings. What do you think of that?
And that, I mean, we only have so much land and resources, so it's like the obvious next step. They're doing these vertical farms, and they have the ability to create organic, hopefully not too genetically modified food, so that that can actually really feed a lot of people. I mean, world hunger is such an enormous problem. But there's also 3D printing food. At Columbia, the researchers have actually come up with what they call a perfect cheesecake, and they used a 3D printer. It has 7 different ingredients making up the ink, and they say it's cooked to perfection with a laser. And while that's just a fun example of what you can do with a 3D printer, you can specifically tailor meals to people who have a very specific dietary restriction. And just that will be tremendous for health.
Gigi, there are a lot of people listening to us right now and watching us and probably saying, you know, this all sounds great, but, you know, what's going to happen down the road? Will we discover that some of these things that we're doing to our body or whatever we're using that's new and different, will it be harmful to us? What's going to be the social impact? You know, how is it going to affect our relationships? And the big one that comes up, and you're a mom as well, what about our kids? What kind of a world?
Wait, I thought this was a positive news.
It's supposed to be positive, but we have to deal with that. You and I are used to this, right? We're used to the plus and the negative as news reporters. So let's kind of look at that for a minute. What is that really going to mean to families and to our homes and to our relationships?
Well, I do think that there is almost a bit of a backlash. So there's this virtual world, but people really do crave that human connection. So what is sort of predicted is that we'll have 2 realities. That you will live in a virtual world, you'll have friends in your virtual world, you'll have relationships, you'll buy a house in your metaverse or whatever, and you will also have your personal life as an entirely separate thing. But I mean, there's so many wild things.
I know.
Like, so we have the ability to talk to someone far away, look at them, but you can't touch them from far away. So researchers in Hong Kong have developed something called an e-skin, and basically you put it on and you do something like hug someone, and they'll send the mechanical signal, and they will be wearing their own e-skin, and you will actually feel them hugging you. I fear that it'd be used for other things.
Probably. I'm sure of that. I'm sure they're thinking, right. My goodness. You know, I did an interview several years back, talked to one of the really bright social scientists, and we were talking about, you know, what's plaguing us? You know, what's really bothering us as human beings? And she had an interesting answer. She said, I'm going to make this really simple. I said, go ahead. She said, you know what? We have too many choices. We have so many choices that it makes people feel uncomfortable with making the right choice. I mean, do I have to tell you? You walk in, you want to buy toothpaste, and one with whitening, one 2%, 5%, 20%, colors and boxes and shapes and stand-up. And
it's all like a creation of,
I know.
of marketing.
So what's going to happen when we have all of these other choices that we're talking about in the future? Is it going to make
that's going away. I think that is the world that we live in. We will continue to have more choices, and frankly, it's a luxury. I mean, that we have the world, and our lives really have gotten so much easier and so much better over the years in so many ways that we don't always appreciate.
I agree with you. You know, one of the things I like to talk about too, and it's sort of what we're on right now, and that is our lifestyle and where we live. So I'll ask you the question. What do you think is really special or good and great about living in the United States, living in America? I mean, you've had so much experience with your career and your family on a personal level. What makes our country really a good place to live?
It almost goes back to our first conversation. So we've got all of this hate, and everyone is so binary and digging in their heels in anger at each other. But it's also really, there's a beauty to it, right? Because we're allowed to. Right. We're allowed to speak our mind, and we're allowed, as long as it's not hurting anyone or inciting violence. But the ability to have freedom from our government telling us what to do in terms of religion, in terms of speech, that is something that people do not always have around the world. Yeah. And we should not take it for granted. I mean, I am first generation American on all sides. Yeah. And I was taught every day how thankful I should be to be an American. And I really try to instill that in my own children.
Yeah, it's a great country. It is. Listen, we have our problems. Everybody has their issues.
Indeed.
But overall, I mean, you think about the opportunity that we all have. I mean, to go to college, to go to school, to learn a career, to develop yourself, to create whatever you want as your world. And I think that's a great thing.
And a lot of responsibility to make sure that we maximize our world and I think are kind to others in that world.
Kindness is a very important thing. A couple of other things I want to ask you. Who influenced you the most growing up? Who had a real impact on your decision to do what you're doing and to be who you are? I think people like to hear stories from anybody, but particularly yourself, because you're a successful woman and
so nice.
You've done so many great things. So who influenced you the most?
I'm going to start crying because she's no longer with us, but my mother was a single working mother with no family in this country. She moved here a year before I was born. And I laughed because she got here and she was like, "What is the fanciest school?" She figured it out. She figured out everything that she had to do because she wanted me to have everything that she never had growing up. And she was a force. I never saw her get upset. She must have been so frightened and alone.
Yeah.
So it was just always the two of us, and she did an amazing job.
Isn't it? And do you find, many times I do this. I'll say, "Gee, I've turned into my dad." I start either saying something or I look like him, or I'll look at my hands sometimes. That was my dad's hand. I used to watch him driving the car.
The hands.
Do you find that though, that many times that you might stop and say, "Gee, I'm like my mom."
I really tried to just take the good stuff. But I remember that she never let me get away with anything. When my children say, I don't feel well for school, I'm like, you know what? I was never allowed to not feel well for school, so you're not going to either. It's just about having high expectations, I think, with a gentle touch.
If you could pass along some information to a newborn, I like to ask this. Something that they could hold on to, and maybe later on in life, they look at it, and it came from you. Some good advice to a little newborn baby, someone coming into this world and trying to look ahead a little bit. But some things are pretty basic and fundamental in life. What would you share with a little newborn?
Oh, there's so many things.
Yeah.
One thing that I have been grateful for that I did get from my mother is no matter how bad things get, the ability to take a step back and laugh. And that's something that maybe is unique to us. Not everyone has that, but I mean, in the most dire situations, my mom could find a joke. And I do think that it really can create a much better life. But also, like I said, to have high expectations, don't sell yourself short. That there is, when anyone closes a door, just find a way around it.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than, I wanted to be a journalist and I wanted to be on television and I wanted to do all of these things. Yeah. And people said, "Oh, you probably shouldn't go ahead with that. That's a really hard profession. It's so competitive." And gosh, I would never say that to anyone. I would tell them, that they better be prepared to work hard. And it's not necessarily the best person who gets the job. It's the person who wants it the most, which I definitely found.
Sure.
That, just try me. Tell me what to do and I'll do it.
And you have to have that confidence. And that comes from, like you talked about your mom, the experiences you have with your family and with friends and other relationships that help you to build up your own sense of who you are. I think that's, as a parent as well, I think that's one of the most important things you can do with your child, to make sure that they understand that they are loved, and appreciated, and they have special gifts that they should develop. And if you give them that, I think no matter what happens, if they feel good about themselves, that's armor. That protects them against anything that'll come their way. And you know things are going to come their way.
And the kindness factor, too, I think is going to go a long way. I mean, I tell them, if you get bullied, we can talk about it. I will fix it. I will help you fix it. If I ever hear that you were the bully, I have no tolerance for that. Zero tolerance policy. You can never be mean. You can never leave people out. You can never be exclusive, because I'm telling you, it will come back and bite you.
It will.
If you're not going to do it just out of kindness, do it for practical reasons.
Yeah, staying on the theme of young people, and we touched on this a little bit in the beginning in terms of social media and the internet. A lot of young people, are so influenced by what they see. And what they read. Why didn't I go to that party? How come I'm not having that kind of a life that this person is having? There's a lot of narcissism, constantly posting pictures and focusing on the me rather than giving to other people. I did a thing recently on volunteering, how important it is. And if you also talk to, the centenarians, there was a study done, what helps them to live to 100 years old. Part of that is the giving spirit, taking away from yourself and saying, what can I do for somebody else? How can I help someone? They have a good sense of humor. They're curious about life. They don't have this attitude, I've been there, I've done that, there's nothing left. I think we have to be really aware of how our young people are being influenced and how we can help protect them for the future.
I just read a book on this topic, and the author is Jennifer Wallace, and it's... she talks about toxic achievement.
Yeah.
And what she's saying is that we're all just trying to achieve and get accolades. And that if you really want to be, it's causing all this anxiety among young people. So if you really want them to be happy, productive members, it's along the lines of what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's telling them that they matter. And not just telling them, but making them feel like they matter. Whether that is just chores, work, kindness to others, volunteering, but it's mattering that will actually combat that anxiety more than anything else. And even your colleagues or your teachers, make them feel like they matter.
Yeah.
Call them out when they've done something right. Make sure to always compliment people when they do something good.
Yes.
Because that actually will make people feel less nervous and unhappy. And I think that will go a long way for young people in the future.
My phone is here, and you had yours a little while ago, and this thing is amazing because we can do so much with it. And I admire, the technology and the capabilities that we have. But at the same time, in terms of communication, look what it's done to our relationships and with family as well. You have a family sitting at a table, they're out at a restaurant, you've seen it, and everybody's on the phone.
I have a zero tolerance policy in my family.
So what do you do? How do you handle it? And how important is it to make sure that we take a little break from all of that?
I mean, it's an addiction.
Yeah.
And it's designed to be addictive. So just like anything else, any other vices in your life that you force yourself not to do because you know it's harmful to you, you have to treat the phone as such. It is for necessary emails. It's for necessary communication, but it is not your primary form of communication, and you have to put it down and force yourself, even though it's tugging at you and it's designed to. I know that feeling.
Right.
Where I'm just like, I just want to check. I heard a text come in.
Exactly.
You really have to, we all have to figure out a way to just put it down.
Yeah, I think you're right. Everything I believe starts in the home. Okay, that is the primary source of relationships. But I also think, education is important. Schools have a responsibility. Think of all the time that kids spend in school. And in terms of the curriculum, many things are taken away. We shouldn't talk about that. We shouldn't talk about this. We're being politically correct. I respect all of that. I understand that. But I feel from an educational standpoint, our schools can be doing a lot more to open the doors and not to worry about having good, healthy discussions, teaching our children about integrity, okay, doing the right thing.
Integrity on the phone and online as well as in person.
Absolutely. So I think education is very important, and I think that I would love to start a campaign to be able to just, have our schools open up a little bit more and just let these kids talk and open up and talk about whatever it happens to be in a healthy way and not be so sensitive to everything. I mean, we're living in a real world, and I think that we have to accept that, don't you?
there is a movement that has made what they call sort of snowflake children, where it's confusing because we want to give people rights when they are feeling anything to own it and be able to express it, but at the same time, it goes back to not everything is always about you. It's a kind of narcissism. So we have to think about the community and the bigger picture and how everyone is feeling collectively as opposed to only ourselves. But I will say, you talked about the phone and schools, and the ones that have been removing the phones and saying that it is not okay. It's a lot easier to do it for middle school than it is for high school because they do have Google Calendar and things that they have to organize. But middle schools that have removed the ability to use phones, and you can do that. You are educators and you are in charge. Have reported that the children are so much happier. Anxiety has gone down, and it is a movement that is the Luddites, they call it.
And that also dovetails into mental health. And we know that we have an issue in our country and around the world with good mental health. We have to have programs. We have to be able to discuss it. We have to make sure that especially our young people have a place to go. A lot of schools now talking about that are saying to young people, you can take a mental health day. I think they're giving them maybe 5 or 6 days out of the year, a mental health day to be able to recharge, maybe talk to your parents or talk to a counselor or to a friend. And I think that mental health in our country is a major issue that has to be dealt with. We don't have to bring up all the horrible stories that relate to a person who's not well and the violence that we witness. So mental health is a very important issue, and I'm sure you agree with me that we need to do more. More.
In terms of young people, I mean, the algorithms in social media are designed that it feeds you everything that you might, if it thinks you have the slightest mental health concern, it will feed you a million ideas on how to be worse, basically. There's a organization, it's called Half the Story, and it's this beautiful young woman. And she had this vibrant high school life, and she had everything going for her. She was driven. She tried to kill herself, and she says it was 100% the algorithms that were sent to her on her phone. And so she has this campaign. She's spoken to Congress, and she's working on helping young people have a healthy relationship with digital media.
I like that.
It's really gone a long way to hurt mental illness in young people.
Good to hear that.
Or mental health.
Mental health, yes. I wanted to bring up one other thing, too, because you're involved in something called Opportunity Network, and an interesting program talking about helping others. Give everybody an opportunity to hear what you do.
That's so nice. It is such an incredible nonprofit that I've been on the board of for more than a dozen years. And what it does is it works with these incredibly smart, very sophisticated children who are going places and have zero opportunity. Very low income levels in their families. Many of them are recently immigrated to this country. And it holds their hand every step of the way. It helps them get into college, get internships, get jobs, write thank you notes, interact with people in a professional setting, make sure they graduate from college and goes on to thriving careers.
That's great, Gigi.
Such a high-touch organization, and these kids will blow you away.
I'll bet.
I've actually asked friends to get them internships, and they always come back to me and say, wow, that was the best intern we ever had. I'm like, I know, these kids are amazing.
You know, it's all about...
They want it. They want to be there. It's different.
It's all about, trying to make the world a better place and leaving something behind. We started talking about the future, so maybe my final question is, okay, when we look about, the future, what to expect, what would you like to see in the future? What would be like a dream to say, man, I wish this would happen. I wish this would be a good
That's
thing.
Fun.
Yeah, what would it be? What would it be?
I'm not against the lack of traffic, private air travel, individual pods that take you where you want to go. That's something that they're working on. No, I want to make the world a better place. I want the eradication of weapons. I want wars not to happen. I want us to figure out how not to fight each other. I think more women leaders could go a long way.
Good. Why not?
That would be
we
more
need leadership,
collaborative.
that's for sure.
they tend to think about things in a different way.
Yeah, well, we're proud of what you do, and I think that, following up on what you're saying, I think our leaders have a real responsibility. The people who have the power and the control, they're the ones that should be coming up with campaigns, whatever it happens to be, hands across New York, hands across America, finding ways to connect us and finding ways that unite us rather than divide us. And I think that's so important. And I know this is a word that's used so often, and I use it at home a lot. I talk to my kids every day. Love. Love is important, and we shouldn't diminish the power of love. To be able to just look at someone and say, you know what, I respect you, I have a love for you, different types of love, of course, but to have that kind of honoring someone, respecting someone, man, that can go a long way to turn the world around.
And don't be shy about saying it out loud.
Absolutely.
Don't feel that you're sort of lesser than because you're being kind or complimenting someone or open.
Hold my hands one more time. Gigi Stonewood, she's a wonderful person, a great personality. You gave us a lot to think about today, and I'm so happy that you came on board.
You're doing so much for the world with your love and positive energy.
Thank you, sweetheart. Keep up the good work, okay? Thanks so much, Gigi. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. Stay positive, everybody.